Rob, when you were posting your super contest picks, I think it was, and you were going about 500, and you were touting yourself as a pretty good NFL gambler, I thought you were an idiot.
Come on, let's go!
Welcome to Circles Off, episode number 155, right here, part of the Hammer Betting Network, and presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I'm Rob Pizzola, joined by Johnny from betstamp.
Back in the saddle again, the martingale better who commented last week.
Oh, man.
Trying to parlay me not getting on the episode. You're down 2 units. However, if you keep going, this one, I think you'll win. There's no way I'm going to be on every single episode. The martingale system.
The martingale system will work for if you're betting on whether or not Johnny. But you might get to a point where you're risking like $500K.
And who's going to take that bet? That's the thing.
You can, not with the betting limits nowadays. I mean, you can get these betting limits at Pinnacle Sportsbook, obviously. Pinnacle.
If anyone was going to offer these limits.
If anyone was going to offer them, it would be the world's sharpest sportsbook available to bettors in Ontario. Find out what the pros have known for decades, 25 years to be exact. Pinnacle's where the best bettors play. You must be 19 plus, not available in the U.S. As always, please play responsibly. If you do want to support us here on Circles Off, use code HAMMER when you sign up at Pinnacle. Goes a long way to helping us continue doing.
And if you're a fan of the show, please consider buying the merch. Rob and Zach, they're trying to put this merch out. No, we're just kidding. We don't have merch yet, but Rob, get the merch. The people want the merch.
I will get merch. Last week's episode, Kyle Kerm's The Sauce reaction. What a roller coaster reading through those comments, dude.
Hilarious.
There was one guy that was like, I think he was responding like every 10 minutes of the video.
We have like well over 100 comments so far. It's
pretty mixed.
It's pretty mixed reviews. A lot of funny ones. I think one guy here commented 4 or 5 times. He was commenting reaction real time. So he started it off with like oh no, you guys are gonna go on Kyle. I can't believe this. And then as we were going, his like blood red, mad, angry meter was like going up and down. He'd be like, I can't believe you guys did this. He'd be like, oh, okay, good point on this. At least you're fair. And then at the end, he commented. What did he comment at the end?
He's like, I think I owe you guys an apology or something like that.
It was a fair video.
That was pretty funny. We did tag Kyle when we released the video on Twitter, which like if you're gonna do a reaction video, whether it's positive or negative, the person's gonna find out anyways. You might as well tag them. But he watched it instantaneously, responded, said he found it funny, DM me on Twitter. And, we've done reaction videos before where we've reached out to people who had zero interest in coming on. Simon Hunter. But the Sauce, he said that he would represent himself. And he said, I've changed a lot as a bettor since that original video. So we're going to try to have Kyle Kerms, the Sauce, on at some point in the future. But, yeah, these videos are, I find them very fun to do. I'm not going to lie. Because it's just easy, and I like to react in real time. I don't like to think about things too much. But, very mixed reactions on this one. So
I wasn't even going to bring this up, actually. Sure. But you know what? I will now. A bunch of comments here, as Rob said to comment below, basically criticizing me on the Dave Portnoy stance. Okay?
I was going to bring it up if you didn't, so I'm glad you brought it up.
A bunch of people criticize me on the Dave Portnoy stance.
Yeah, you apparently think that like Dave Portnoy is a better than me.
I wasn't saying that specifically, but you know what? Do I even want to give it out? Do I even want to defend myself? Do I even need to?
I think you should. There's a collection of people that think you're an idiot. You might as well defend yourself.
I was a bit hesitant when I said it. I'm like, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, I kind of agree. And then Rob's like, really? Zach's like, come on. And I'm like, all right, fine. Because I didn't want to say what this. I didn't want to like.
I know that you were. I can tell by your reactions that you were holding something back there. Like you wanted to say something, but then you were thinking about, should I say this?
Think of it this way. All right. Why would I say that Dave Portnoy's bet might be more important than a nothing bet?
Do you want me to answer that?
Do you know why? Why would I be saying that?
You
that
could
Portnoy's $1 million bet
yes.
could be something.
You could be implying that it's not Dave Portnoy's bet.
Potentially. That would be a sharp thing.
Yeah, we'd be idiots to say that this doesn't happen. Like it most certainly happens in the industry where somebody is a pretty high profile bettor that doesn't win and somebody might reach out to them and be like, hey, do you want to actually win?
If Dave Portnoy, who right now is painted in the media as a notorious bad bettor who bets big, okay? So pretty much a sportsbook's dream to be booking Dave Portnoy right now. Would you agree?
I would agree, yes.
You would agree. It's
I mean, he's not even getting good numbers on these bets. He's betting
$1 million, 500,000, 500 on spread, 500 money line, whatever he's betting. He's betting big amounts on stuff, and he's a perceived guy who doesn't know what he's doing betting sports. He's just a rich sports fan from a media company who had a bunch of things, okay? So let's say Portnoy loses, all right? He's losing money right now. Let's say he loses 10 mil. Say he loses 15 mil betting, all right? Now he's got a couple books where he's got probably at least one book where he can click maybe $1 mil, maybe $2 mil.
He's got a lot of runway.
Maybe $5 mil.
Yeah.
On a single game. Now think of it this way. If Dave Portnoy can click $1 mil on a game or $5 mil on a game, would that or would that not be super valuable for a sharp sports betting group to potentially get access to or potentially work with somebody? Now, I'm not saying this happens with Dave Portnoy. In fact, I would estimate it doesn't.
It probably doesn't.
Right now.
Yeah.
However, there's been a lot of celebrities in the past where we know for a fact that it has happened, right? You look back to certain golfers, certain things like that have been in the news where that actually has been, relatively public knowledge is confirmed. You can look it up. So when you guys are saying, oh, the bet size, it only matters if you're a sharp guy. Anyone who's moving size in the space and can get down size is going to be relevant at some capacity at some time frame. It may not be right now, but all I'm saying is this. If you were just going to flat out say, oh, Dave Portnoy's bets, like somebody will eventually get burned booking Dave Portnoy. That's what I will say.
All right.
I'd wager that. I'd take the yes that somebody gets burned booking Portnoy in the future.
If you offered me even money.
Dude, and he's such a guy that would partner with someone.
No, but is he?
Yes, dude. You know how much of a petty guy he is if you ever listen to Dave Portnoy?
I do.
He's smart guy.
I've met Portnoy before. I mean, this was long before Barstool became big. Same with Big Cat. I like this content. I think it's very funny. I find him amusing. I think he's like he values his opinion too much.
Yeah.
Where you know what I'm getting at?
I think his ego's too big. Like, I know. Yeah. I know.
It's like Davey Day Trader, right?
Yeah.
Sure, mate. So maybe he wouldn't do it. But all I'm saying is, like, the point was made.
I understand the point. Yes.
I actually, to go back and defend even further, if you rewatch the clip, what I actually said was, you guys said, hey, it matters only, like the size only matters if of the bet. Size of the bet only matters if you're a professional. And what I said was, like, even if you're not a professional, it still matters.
Yeah.
And then Zach kind of brought in like Dave Portnoy and whatever. And at this current example, like, I'm not going to go on record and say I think Dave Portnoy wins on his current bets, but I would factor that in. I would be weary of that. If he is betting at massive size consistently, I would take stock in that and be weary of it. How I'd use that information, unclear. Maybe there's no way to benefit off of that right now, but that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So just to defend myself in the comments, I shouldn't even have to do.
No,
but
well, you know what? It's a valid point. I'll give you that. Like, if I still don't think you're going to build the F1 car ever, but I think this
the F1 car also is. I did see a guy comment on Twitter saying, I used to think he couldn't build the car, but after getting into F1 and researching it, I'll now take that he could build it in a shorter time frame.
No.
Yes,
No.
a guy commented that on Twitter.
I don't believe that comment
Go
existed.
check the Twitter. I'm going to go pull. Okay, I'll pull it up right now.
Okay.
Pull it up right now.
I think I've told you this story before. I don't know if I've told it on air. Bet Bash 2, there was a bookie better breakfast thing. I was at a table with like Peter Jennings, former host of 90 Degrees, Kevin Davis. There was a couple guys there, one of whom was a NASCAR mechanic. And he told me to relay a message to you. I don't know if I ever did. But he's like, you got to tell Johnny that me as a mechanic right now, if you gave me all of the everything, I couldn't do it. I couldn't physically pull it off. There's too many things that are required in an F1 car that will take multiple people regardless because of the balancing issues that you would have building it yourself.
It could be done.
Most importantly, though, we got a comment. Is Johnny aware that it's supposed to be a G note and not a Gino?
I still call it a Gino.
Yeah, obviously he's aware. I wanted to get at that. There's a lot of fire comments from last week, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, here it is, Zach. Look at this guy's comment.
You said
Believe it or not, he can a year ago. I said no. Spent some time studying manufacturing due to the Russian-Ukrainian war. I can say he can in a shorter period with the right machinery and tools. And you know what? Skylander 5, you're a real one. Yeah. I appreciate you, man. And if we ever do the bet, I'll toss you some money of Rob's money after I take it off him.
This is Johnny's. If we ever wanted to find Johnny's burner account, it's Skylander 5.
Absolutely not my burner. I wouldn't do that, guys.
A few more things I just want to touch on randomly because I'm seeing them now. For the people who are like, you got to have, like, you should just have the person on instead of doing reaction videos exist across YouTube in every realm. Music, movies, whatever. You can't just have everybody on. Like, that's not the point of a reaction video. The point of a reaction video is to react to the content that was produced. So, like, yeah, we'll give him his fair shake, but, like, if we just brought him on and be like, yeah, we watched your video and this and that, like, it's not good content. It kind of sucks, honestly. So
and some people were mad about clickbaiting him in the title.
Yeah, now that's on Zach.
That's on Zach.
First of all,
that's on Zach.
This is on Zach. So people are really upset because they came and they thought this was an interview. They thought we were interviewing the sauce. The title is How to Bet for Income. Kyle Kerm's the sauce reaction. Reaction right away, I think, gives it away. Like,
throws his producer right under the bus.
But the thumbnail has a picture of the sauce, and people are like, "No, you don't." Yeah. I'm like, "No, you do. Like, you do. You literally do that for every reaction video that exists. There's a thumbnail of what you're reacting."
Did you guys see producer Zach? You might like this one. Did you guys see that Islam Makhachev, the UFC 155-pound champ? He's a Dagestani fighter, really good, one of the best right now. He's on an interview, like on a podcast. And then he just looks and he's like, the producer is on the show as well, on the camera, right? So he's like doing the video interview and the producer's there, obviously just producing. And then Makhachev's like, he just pauses after an answer and he's like, who is this guy? He's just standing here asking no questions. And then the guy's like, oh, it's just the producer. He's like editing the video.
Yes. Man. Well, Zach successfully clickbaited everyone into watching this video, apparently.
I have one good comment because it got sent to me a couple of times. I actually laughed out loud reading this. Hagren BPR put out the
give us a 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's fine.
I will say, for the
he said my thing about Portnoy is the dumbest condom he had. Now, how dumb you feel now, Hagren? There you go.
Okay, no.
I will say also, the rating systems, like this, I don't know Hagren, but I've interacted with him enough and like followed him enough over time that type of video is not what he's going to be into. Like, he really wants to learn more about. He's already a very skilled bettor, but he wants to learn and acquire knowledge. You're not going to like a reaction video, so we can't take that too seriously.
No. But there's this part. So, well, he also does say this isn't for me. It gets as popular, but he is not going to enjoy this. This is the part that everyone sent to me. Even the producer Zach is like, "Come on," which is all you need to know.
Wow, you guys!
No, that was in regards to the Portnoy.
Yes, it was in regards to the Portnoy.
But it's a direct shot at you.
Like,
no, it wasn't.
Yeah,
yes,
but it is.
It's a shot at me.
It's a direct shot at Zach.
Even the producer Zach was like, "Come on," which is all you need to know.
Wow!
I read that. I laughed out loud, but I was like, "What the fuck?"
It's not very nice of Hagren. By
He's
the
like,
way,
then Johnny says we should have Kyle Kerms on. He's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what you got to do." Are we having him on or no?
Yeah, we're gonna have him on. I'm gonna reach out. We've already been interacting. We're gonna coordinate a date to have him on. I think we should have him on. Like, honestly, listen, I love doing content. We're very much in the business of putting together good content. That got a lot of views, and they're not just fake views. Like, our average watch time on that video is 154th episode. In the first week is the highest average watch time we've ever had on any video. So
it was also a blast to record that one. A lot of fun.
So like, people were into it and they watched it. So I don't know what else to do. Like, we got to do it. We're gonna do it. Also, there's this one guy who keeps asking about this Tim Brown bobblehead. I don't know how the hell
this is not mine. He said, Johnny, what's the story? This is not mine.
I don't know how that Tim Brown bobble was that in our old studio.
No. This is new. Whose is this? Yours or Zach's?
Zach, you brought
It's
that?
mine.
What's the story behind this?
Okay, the story is also, if you see in front of Rob there, which cut the camera there, people can see that one as well. I believe it was my grandpa was cleaning out his basement and like getting rid of a bunch of shit, and I went over there to pick up golf balls, and he's like, "Do you want these? I'm just gonna throw them out."
You probably shouldn't play golf balls from 3 decades earlier.
No,
unless they're more recent. They're nice, good ones?
Oh, they're good ones. Okay. My grandpa's like he golfs every single day.
Amazing.
So he's not playing with shit balls. But yeah, so he collects the boxes of them. But he had these bobbleheads. He's like, "Do you want them?" Like, I guess. So like I brought the Shaq and the Tim Brown one, but I have at home like I have a Kobe one. I have a random Raptors players that you probably wouldn't even know.
Zontabak?
No.
Oliver Miller?
No.
I'm sure Rob knows
Muggsy Bogues in there.
Of course,
No,
Muggsy Bogues.
I'm not
Space
including
Jam,
Muggsy
dude.
Bogues in the
All right,
you wouldn't
go
know category. Yeah, but I have a bunch of different ones, so they were just given along as I was gonna throw these out. Do you want them?
Don't test me on my Raptors knowledge.
Do you know it or no?
I don't know.
I'll try to find out what they were.
Players.
I'll try to
If he
find
sends
out.
me a picture, I'll tell you who the bobblehead is.
Yeah.
For Zach's era, he's probably going to be like, it's guys you'll never know, like Morris
Like
Peterson.
Damon Stoudemire.
No, I know those guys.
Morris Peterson. All right, we're going to get into this episode. Before we do, I just want to mention one more thing. I'm not going to like pull up a list and butcher all the details or whatever, but friend of ours, I would say, Preston Johnson, acquired an English soccer team a few years back with a bunch of crypto bros who made some money off of NFTs, Crawley Town. And he went in there and he took an absolute beating from the fans of Crawley Town. Get this American out of here, fix our team. There was a ton of turmoil with a bunch of coaches got fired and resigned. There was one point where they only had one coach on a bench. Preston had to fly from California to England for one of the games to watch, to be on the sidelines, which didn't go over well with the fan base. But you know what's going over well with the fan base now is promotion. Congratulations, Preston. Crawley Town, big success, some money in your pocket. You deserve it. You're a great guy. So they're going up. They've been promoted from League Two. For those that don't know, or maybe watch like Welcome to Wrexham with Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhaney's team. Wrexham, they were in the same division. They're both going up next year. So that's huge. Congratulations to everyone involved in that. I don't know what the ownership structure is. I'm kind of bitter I'm not in on it. I'll be completely honest with you. But regardless, it's nice. I know Rufus Peabody attended. There's like a picture of them hugging it out at the final whistle. I kind of got like a little bit emotional watching that. So congratulations to Preston for that. I'd love to actually have him on as well, just to tell the whole story about that.
Crawley Town. Next stop, EPL.
Yeah, I think there's one more in between. I think they're League One now.
My bad.
And then there'll be the championship, and then there will be.
But they're gonna get there. I hope so.
Tony Bloom's got an EPL team. Second greatest better of all time, Preston Johnson. You'll be there with Tony Bloom one day, right?
There you go.
All right, shifting gears here now. This is a guest episode. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. Previously, because of some comments that were made about this guest on a previous episode of Circles Off, but someone who I've interacted with for many, many years on Twitter. Let's get right into it. Our guest this week here on Circles Off is a sports bettor who specializes in WNBA betting. He was once called one of the worst follows on gambling Twitter. We'll get to that over the course of this interview. You can follow him on Twitter at Bartlett157. Alex Bartlett joins us here on Circles Off. Alex, how are things?
Things are good, Rob. Appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah, you were actually requested by some fellow Circles Off listeners, subscribers, followers. By the way, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. But yeah, I don't know. You had like a confused look that someone would have requested.
As a proud member of the worst gambling Twitter follows, I'm surprised. It's honestly surprised that anybody would. But
Alex, that's a stellar setup you have behind you there. Where are you calling in from?
No joking. My basement. That's where the office setup is. It is my basement. It's not my mother's basement. So just get that straight. But yeah, I don't know. I live in the basement. That's where the setup is. So
Nice. I was more referring to where are you located, like within the U.S.
Oh, I'm in the Madison, Wisconsin area, South Central Wisconsin.
Okay, so we'll get right into it. You've been on gambling Twitter for a while, even from when I first started. I always see you asking questions, things like that. Sometimes I'll read the timeline. Tell us a bit about basically your background, how you got into sports betting.
Yeah, so unlike most of your guests, I have zero family or friend connections to gambling at all, like none. My family didn't even play cards at family get-togethers. My parents and I watch, the Packers games on Sundays, but like my dad isn't a huge diehard sports fan. Um, my connection kind of came through Twitter. Growing up in elementary school or in middle school or whatever, the way that they taught statistics to us was through tracking and like calculating baseball statistics. And that was like really the first time that math made sense to me. And then moving forward, I saw, I don't want to name the guy because he's still on Twitter, but came across an ESPN post with a tout going on about how I think it was like a lower seed in college basketball. They called it an upset that they won, and he's like, it wasn't an upset; they were favored. Like, well, how does that make any sense? So I started digging into that, learned about sports betting from there, and realized that there was probably a way that you could apply math and stats to that. So,
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. It's very rare. Usually when we do ask that question, like you pointed out, Alex, most people have had some sort of other introduction to sports betting, whether that's through someone that they know or just like a huge sports fan, came across it at an early age. So that's a little bit different. Now, when I first interacted with you on Twitter, I can't pinpoint exactly what it was, but it was a long time ago. I've known you through Twitter for a long time. And you were I'll call it for what it is, a very casual bettor. For a large majority of our interactions, you used to ask me some questions. If you probably went back and looked at your timeline from like 7 or 8 years ago, you might even be embarrassed at some of the things that you posted at that time. Like I am personally, maybe not. I don't want to speak on your behalf. But what was the turning point for you that made you transition from like that casual bettor to sharp bettor? Was it a long journey? Did something just click for you at some point? Were there some key moments or realizations? If you could just walk us through that, I'd find that interesting.
yeah, so I think one of my strong suits is that I'm smart enough to know that I'm not very smart. I think being able to filter through bullshit is something that I'm pretty good at. So I have kind of a funny story. Rob, when you were posting your super contest picks, I think it was, and you were going about 500, and you were touting yourself as a pretty good NFL gambler. I thought you were an idiot. And it wasn't until Frank Brank reached out and he's like, there's like game theory behind this. And like, there's a reason he's picking these. Like instead of assuming Frank was also an idiot, I was like, oh, maybe this guy knows something. Maybe I should actually pay attention. So I think just, slowly over time, realizing what accounts were full of shit, and what people actually knew that they were talking about. And I think that there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens in the older generation of gambling Twitter, and for good reason. But being able to pick out the stuff in their tweets, I think was kind of what did it for me. I tried the whole parlay everything together, and you're going to become a millionaire, and it just didn't work. So
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask, what are you doing right now for betting? Like, are you full-time? Are you part-time? What stuff you betting?
I think I would label myself as semi-professional. I don't know. I hate that term. I'm not a professional. I have a full-time job. I've always had a full-time job. I do think that that's one of the things that has actually allowed me to get better is because I'm not relying on the sports betting for income. It allows me to take some chances that I probably wouldn't feel comfortable taking otherwise. So Rec
right.
Plus,
Yeah.
probably semi-professional. It's yeah.
And then what stuff you doing right now? Are you originating? Is it, obviously, Rob, we mentioned you're betting WNBA. I know you've been tweeting about that a lot, but what is it that you're actually betting right now?
Originating mostly women's basketball, WNBA stuff. Not women's, but some foreign men's league stuff. throwing in some fun things every now and again. Women's Euro League, you actually can bet a little bit on Women's Euro League. I don't know, whatever was doing AHL for a while, pretty much whatever seems like fun at the time, I'll try and dive into. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it fails miserably. But again, I think that kind of goes back to the not necessarily relying on it to pay the bills. I can take those chances of failing miserably. So,
Did you say AHL as in American Hockey League?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Do you ever do WNCAA?
Yep, I'll do that.
So, okay, I guess I'll ask, what sparked your interest in this? Was it that you had an edge, or were you just, you said whatever seems fun at the time? Were you actually just interested in like women's ball?
So I've always been a fan of the women's basketball, especially the college game. I think the women's college basketball is quite a bit better than the WNBA. It's more fun. It's a bit more fluid. Little bit, yeah. I don't know. I just find that more fun. So I was a fan of that. Saw that was offered on the betting menu, and started to dig in. And then from there, I heard a lot of the old tropes about how the WNBA was soft, a money printer, easy to beat. And a couple of years ago it was. I don't know if that's entirely true anymore, but figured that following, women's college basketball would give me a bit of an advantage, based on knowing players coming in and kind of their styles and how I thought that they would mesh with other future teammates. So.
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot that I wanted to ask you about in regards to the WNBA. But first and foremost, I know some WNBA bettors, but they started with men's basketball, whether that be the NBA, college basketball. From your perspective, how different is the women's game compared to the men's game? Like, if someone took a WNBA model and tried to apply it to NBA, call it men's college, maybe even women's college basketball, like just another league, doesn't have to be men's or women's. Could they have success in any capacity? Like, is there a lot of overlap between these sports, or are they fundamentally different from one another?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's all basketball. It's not terribly hard to, I don't know, get 75, 80% of the way out there on making a number. It's just, offensive rating, defensive rating, number of possessions in a game, and if you're doing player level stuff, projecting out minutes. So there's probably some overlap there. I mean, obviously there's more that goes into it than that. I don't know too much about the NBA, but I know that there are tons and tons of advanced metrics out there on individual players' impacts, Darko and I can't think of some of the other ones off the top of my head, but the WNBA doesn't really have quite that same level of individualized. Hello, this is my cat. Doesn't have quite the same level of individualized player impact ratings. So that gets a little more tricky. So you're spending a lot more time trying to figure out and quantify a player's impact to team offensive and defensive rating. Some of it's art, some of it's science. So I think it's similar, but probably different at the same time.
All right, can you walk us through a little bit of that process then? Because you say some of it's art, some of it's science, right? What is your typical process for analyzing a WNBA game? Like, are you modeling the games? Is there a handicapping element in some form? Like, basically, how are you arriving at a bet on a WNBA game?
Yeah, so I do mostly player level modeling stuff. I mean, that's how I come up with my number. From there, I will. I've put together. Oh, you are. Sorry about that. I've put together quite a Twitter list over the years of beat writers, team, not necessarily team faculty, but even like fans of teams. There are people that have season tickets for the WNBA that will.
No, there's not.
Yeah,
just kidding.
I talked to some of them, and they're there. They're at the games. They see how people are moving. If there's, somebody coming back from an injury, they're going to see if they look like they're moving right or not. And sometimes they'll tweet stuff like that out. I think an advantage of the WNBA is that, the injury information, there's less aggregators. In fact, I don't really know if there are any injury aggregators. There's also less ties into the agents. So you're getting a lot more stuff directly from very small beat reporters with, I mean, sometimes even a couple hundred people following them. So putting together Twitter lists with people like that, and then it's seeing what they're saying. Is somebody tired? Is somebody injured? They might not be on the injury report, but they might not be moving great. So that's kind of where the art of it comes in, is trying to figure out, what impact that might have to the game.
How long have you been betting WNBA now?
6 or 7 years, just before the pandemic, a couple years before the pandemic.
All right, so most major sports, and apologies, like if I'm not calling WNBA a major sport for people,
Canceled.
but it's not.
Canceled.
It's not relative to others right now. But most major sports have seen like some pretty significant leaps in data over the course of years, right? Like baseball went to StatCast and exit velocity and all sorts of stuff that is actually crazy now. Even I'm not a huge baseball fan anymore. I look at some of the data, I find it overwhelming. Pretty much every sport has gone this path. For WNBA, what does the data evolution look like there? Like you mentioned, it's not on par with the men's game right now and a lot of the bigger metrics that are used in the NBA, but has there been an evolution, or is it still, pretty flat?
Yeah, so there are websites putting together and compiling better, team advanced data, individual advanced data. You can find shot chart data. It's hard to find. There are a lot of errors in it, but it's a starting point. But all that stuff is relatively new within the last, at least as far as I'm aware, the shot chart data stuff is relatively new in the last maybe 3-ish years. And the individual, easily being able to get a hold of, effective field goal percentage, offensive, rebound rates, assist rates, stuff like that. Easily being able to get a hold of that was probably, right about maybe the time that I started getting fairly serious into it. So it's come a long ways, but it's certainly not, you could look up advanced NBA individual impact metrics and come up with a list of 20 of them, and all of them are probably better than what the W has access to right now.
Yeah, so I'm interested in that because again, I don't bet a lot of NBA, or at least I don't originate a lot of NBA. But when I was kind of really into NBA, it was like box score plus minus, BPM, and now you mentioned like Darko. There's EPM as well, which is pretty highly used across the board. Like, what are the key metrics or statistics that you would consider most important to evaluating WNBA games now? I'm not asking you to model it out for us, but if you're a casual fan and you're looking to all of a sudden get into the sport, what were some key metrics that you would look at?
Well, so like I said, I know it's maybe not the most exciting answer, but I feel like basketball modeling is relatively solved. It's the 4 factors, how that plays into offensive rating, and then defensive rating. What really changes that is players being in and out. Stars in the WNBA are much more integrated into the offense than they are in the NBA. There's a lot less ISO game. So I do think that the market tends to overreact to star players being out. And likewise, I think maybe something that is factored, but not necessarily as much, is that bigs and size really control defense. And I think that's known in the men's game. But in the WNBA, it's really a very big outsized impact. Guards just can't, they don't have the game's played below the rim, so they just don't have quite the same defensive impact as a 6'7" big who can get up and block a shot. As far as metrics I'm looking at, effective field goal percentage, you still want teams taking layups and shooting threes and free throws. You still want a point guard who can facilitate and set up passes. There's not necessarily a lot of individual WNBA work out there, but there's a lot of basketball work, and you can read plenty of papers on that and take that as a good starting point and adapt from there.
Yeah, so just on that front as well, The men's game obviously has evolved quite a bit from when I was a teenager watching basketball to where it is now. Like no mid-range stuff anymore. It's either down low or three-point shots. Have those same evolutions happened in the women's game? Like, are there specific trends that you're noticing more over the last few years versus when you started betting like 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, I would say for sure. It seems like that evolution is a bit slower to get to the W. I don't know if that is because the game is less athletic and less explosive.
Do you think it's possible that it's because the teams have less data to work with?
Yeah, I mean that's a good thought. Again, it doesn't seem like it would take a rocket scientist to figure out that three is worth more than two, and in the shorter the two, the more likely it is to go in. But again, we're talking about sports and people in sports, and there certainly aren't a ton of rocket scientists in sports. I think that I do think that the mid-range game is a bit more valuable in women's basketball, just due to the fact that there's it is a little bit less athletic. So you'll see a guard drive and they can create more separation from pulling up at that elbow location. It's still not a great shot. You see a lot of high volume players take it too much. But yes, they're overall, I think that there's particularly on the 3-point side, there's been quite a push to get better at that, but from players.
Yeah, there are some rocket scientists in sports. Matt Patricia would be one. Somehow continues to get a job in the league over and over and over.
Genius. I do actually remember. I used to bet WNBA a lot more. I do remember there was a time, basically probably about 3 years ago, maybe the first season back after COVID, where there would be news coming out on players being out and stuff like that, and the line wouldn't move for a good 5 to 10 minutes on player news, including some key players and stuff like that would move at a couple of points. And at the time, even NBA lines weren't moving very fast on injury news. But then, as everything kind of goes away, and then now more people like you, I guess, follow, make Twitter lists and stuff like that. I'm sure it's not as quick, Mark. It's not as quick to react as an NBA injury. But how quick are we to react right now in a WNBA?
I think once the big players get a hold of it, it moves pretty quickly. There are less aggregators in the space, so there's not necessarily like a Woj or a Shams who seems to have every piece of information the second that it's available. A lot of it is coming from smaller, the Hartford Current or whatever it is tweeting something out to their 700 followers, and by the time Underdog gets a hold of that, maybe it's slowly trickled into the market a little bit, but it takes longer it takes longer for there to be a sizable impact in the market. But once once like an Underdog gets a hold of it, it's still going to move. I mean, it's not really any different than any other sport. And you were talking a couple of years ago, it seemed like player news wasn't happening. I don't know this for sure, but I think that there was a big group who was usually on top of that, whose scraper was broken for the better part of that year. So
technology issues, man.
There you
go.
go.
Keep up on that stuff. Yeah, keep up on it. Yeah. Just in regards to that, I mean, you mentioned that you're semi-pro or Rec Plus and you hold a full-time job. Are you able to keep up with that news over the course of the day? Is there like a specific news cycle where you sort of see news starts to filter in at a certain time of day? How do you balance your day around that?
Yeah, so I get up at 5 every day to do a lot of the betting stuff before I ever have to leave for work. I'll peruse, again, the Twitter list that I've curated. I'll peruse that. A lot of times you'll see from games before that there's a suggestion that a player might not play. That stuff isn't always day of game, but otherwise, I have access to my phone. I've got notifications set up. When it goes off, I'm usually a few minutes behind, but not far enough behind that it's a huge issue. That's not to say that I've never missed a play, but it's something that you learn to work with. The company that I work for is aware that I bet. I don't know if they know how much of that I'm doing at work, but they don't. Nobody said anything otherwise. The work gets done. So.
Yep, I get it totally. We're into late May now, and season's been going for a little bit of time. But prior to the season, and I'm going through your Twitter timeline right now, Unabated put out a tweet that was basically like a primer for WNBA. You quote tweeted that, and you said to take the article with a grain of salt because there were some old, outdated, cliche takes in it. Do you care to expand on that? Like, what specifically that people say about the WNBA now from a betting perspective might be old and cliche and outdated?
Yeah, so I think that the idea that back in the day, the NBA was like this cash cow and money printer, I think that was probably true, and probably true up until recently. And if you have an edge, I mean, there's still money to be made. I think where people lose a little bit of sight there is that there are a lot of professional basketball bettors. That's what they do. I mean, you talked about how the sport translates across genders and across levels and whatever. There are a lot of people out there that just bet basketball. That's their thing. Every league, every level. And in the summer, there's nothing going on except for the W. So there are a lot of high-level basketball bettors that are operating in the W. It's the only league. It's what they do. It's how they make money over the summer. So the idea that it's just a bunch of slappies and they're betting their same-game parlays on Caitlin Clark I think that trope is a bit outdated. And to say that there isn't liquidity, I mean, again, it's not the NBA, it's not the MLB, it's not probably even college basketball, but of the three major offshores right now, you could go through and click and get 10 grand in 3 different sites. I mean, it's not like there's no money, no liquidity out there. So, and then he goes on to talk about some prop stuff that I don't necessarily have an opinion on. I do think that those will probably become more available. Maybe Johnny would know more about that than I would. But it seems like as the casuals get more into the WNBA, that's something that would be more available.
Yeah, actually, WNBA props are available. They're pretty easy to beat right now because lines are all over the place, pretty well moving. The problem with WNBA props is just the the stake factor limiting on the books right now. I talked about this with the prop market before on how it actually helps keep your accounts alive a little bit longer versus betting an NFL prop, for example, versus betting college basketball total, which I still back behind, and as of right now is 100% true still. If we really think about this from that perspective, it's like, who is actually betting a WNBA player prop? It's likely not a recreational bettor. It's someone who's angle shooting. And then in addition to that, it's like, who's betting a WNBA player prop under 19.5 points, closes 16.5 points? It's very obvious to see that player is going to win. Whereas when you look at NBA, go around Twitter. There's tons of guys posting NBA player prop picks that are just straight trash and going to lose. Right. And they're betting those, and their followers are betting those, and they're betting Jokic triple double. It's way harder to blend in.
Yeah, that's got to change over time, though, right? As the WNBA grows in popularity, you're going to get more casuals are betting this stuff.
But as of right now, think about it realistically. Who's betting WNBA player props? We don't even know players. No one even knows half these players.
If I was a trader,
I'd auto limit anyone if I was trying to limit.
Not auto limit, but okay, listen, my WNBA knowledge is next to nothing. I'm sorry, I don't watch a lot of sports anymore. I focus on football and hockey. That's kind of my thing. Everything else, I just kind of know what's going on. I know who Caitlin Clark is. I know I can't name many WNBA players.
Name even 3 more.
Angel Reese is now
is she in the WNBA?
She got drafted.
Still in college?
Yeah, she got drafted this year. And that's it. That's so I've maxed out at 2. But
you guys know Sue Bird?
She's not in the W anymore.
Retired.
She's now you're canceled.
Am I canceled? No.
Wow.
So there you go.
Okay, but my point is, if I was a trader, right, and I saw somebody betting Caitlin Clark props, I'd probably be okay, they're probably more of a casual in there. But if I saw some players that I had no idea who they were,
which is every player in the league except for those 2 you mentioned.
But that's what I mean.
Obviously, maybe there's a couple more. Obviously, Brittany Griner or whatever. I know a couple more.
There we go. Listen, this is not going well for me right now. But my point is that if I was somebody who was trading for a sports book and I saw NBA props coming in, you're more likely to give the benefit of the doubt on maybe like a secondary player because they're more of a household name. And this, again, I don't mean to disrespect or disparage the WNBA. I have no issues with that, like, whatsoever. I'm just saying that the likelihood that you're going to get a pro betting secondary WNBA props relative to a casual, I think is much higher. There's a much higher ratio there than in the NBA. That's kind of what.
Yeah, and I did actually catch some flack for saying that like player props help actually keep the accounts alive, but it's just it's not necessarily player props. It's just look at what all of these rec guys right now in the content space are posting pics of. Like during NBA, during NFL, like the guys are betting like Tyreek Hill to get 3.5 over catches or over 6.5 catches, stuff like that. Like they're actually betting that and giving that out, even though it's not necessarily like sharp plays. So if you can find edges there, it blends right in. And sure, you're not just going to be able to fire player props and win at a high scale forever without your account getting cut. That's not what I was saying. But for the most part, should increase the longevity.
Totally.
I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation on the market dynamics. I mean, a couple of years ago, people would see player props going into accounts and it would be almost an auto limit. But now, like the popularity of the SGP stuff, which I don't know, makes me sick to my stomach, but it's a different conversation. I'm not surprised that traders seeing some accounts getting filled with player props. They don't even bat an eye at it anymore. It's just a dude donking off some player and props, watching the game with his friends.
Plus a lot of these guys play fantasy basketball, fantasy football, stuff like that. Like they don't even care to bet. Like obviously we know a lot of the stats have come out now, but like the game total, for example, is significantly less popular than what would be the top prop for the game by a mile. So for example, like even non-popular players are getting more action than like a Tony Pollard rushing prop would have more bet count than like the total of the game on a lot of these rec books. So if you factor that in, it's like, especially with WNBA, like who's betting the WNBA total?
Yeah,
a lot of sharps.
I would say so right now. Like as there's more TV deals now, I see more games on TV than I ever would have before. And at some point, like the dynamic is going to change. Exactly like you mentioned, Alex. Like 10 years from now, it's a completely different conversation in all likelihood. But right now, as it stands, I would totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Just like on the dynamic front. Sorry to steal the show here, but like. I used to run Prediction Machine for 1 year, right?
He also consulted for sportsbooks in the past.
I did not say that. Wow. I did not say that. But I ran Prediction Machine for 1 year, and the first thing I did when I went in there is like just a general audit of the business. And one of the things that Prediction Machine used to do was when they ran a simulation on the game, they'd post. You could click into the game and you would see the box score of that specific game. And no one was clicking these box scores. So I'm like, well, why are we taking like the extra time to post all these when they get like 20 clicks a day? So I said, we're going to not do this anymore. Someone who currently is a big-time trader for an offshore sportsbook DMs me and says, hey, like what happened to these box scores? I'm like, yeah, we're not going to run them anymore. No one ever clicks in these. Like I use them to trade player props for the game. And like, that was, I don't know, 7 years ago? Now it's like totally unthinkable. Like there was so little volume on player props for like an NBA game or even an NFL game that there was a trader that was like using the Prediction Machine number as the standard for trading a game, which it's like hilarious.
But I do think a lot of that is because the DraftKings and FanDuel, which are the two biggest right now, started as DFS shops, which was all like player-based stuff. And then that transitioned into the sportsbook, and they were more willing to take like player props and stuff like that. Prior to that, like prior to 2017, when I was betting, like you could maybe fire some stuff onto like Bodog, Bovada would have some player props, maybe some PPH, but it wasn't like largely accepted that every book had player props. Like some wouldn't even carry them.
Yeah.
Now every book's carrying.
Now everybody has
carrying
to carry
props.
Has to carry the props. I reached out to a friend of the show, Kirk Evans, to let him know that you were coming on. He's like, Alex, great guy. I'm like, you know him? Like, you done stuff with him? He's like, no, I just like his Twitter account. He keeps it real. I'm like, all right. He told me to ask you, and he's very interested in the CLV conversation around WNBA. Do you consider closing line value less important in WNBA considering how much less liquid it is than, relative to major markets.
Yeah, so it's been a few years since I've really done the work. I mean, it still matters. It might not be as directly correlated to the final result as, NBA or major college basketball. But historically, the move tends to be the correct move. I think it's less liquid, but again, with the volume of sharp people that are in the market, I think that yeah, it still holds merit. I mean, I'd still rather get the best of the number than not. I would still rather see my bet close 2 points better than not. Um, yeah, I don't know I don't know how accurate it is now compared to 5 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever, but it's I don't see it getting any less efficient. That's for sure.
I actually just had that. It's funny you ask. I didn't even know you were going to ask that. I just had that analysis run for a couple sports, including WNBA. It's obviously just been quick right now. We ran like last year and the start of this year. It was actually more efficient close than last year's and than like this current season's NBA. Obviously, that's a little bit of variance as well.
Yeah,
but
wow.
it's going to be efficient. Obviously, I'm not saying, okay, now I got to back up here. I'm not saying that the WNBA at those limits is more efficient than the NBA at those limits. I'm just saying like over a 1 year sample size.
Yeah. It was on.
What I draw from that conclusion is that for people who are asking like, oh, are these lines sharp? Like, if I get 2 point CLV, am I going to win? Like the answer is yes, I do believe you're going to win. But obviously even when people ask CLV, even in the comments here on Twitter and stuff, people are like, oh, well, technically this could be in this. On one game, sure, anything can happen. Like there's fakes, there's this happens, whatever. But when you run the whole season and calculate it, like the CLV wins versus no CLV. So sure, on a 1 game sample, obviously anything can happen, but for the most part, it's going to win.
Yeah.
And I do believe
you're never going to be able to dodge the CLVs. Like we still get comments on our channel all the time of like, oh, I've got 80% CLV last week and I took a beating. Like CLV doesn't matter anymore. People just have sample size issues.
Stay tuned for my plus CV move of the week. Actually, I wrote it down yesterday.
Alex, on the topic of Caitlin Clark entering,
here we go,
league.
Pizzola.
No, it's important because I actually want to know how this has affected WNBA betting this year. Like, is there a noticeable difference at the start of this season around the WNBA from a betting landscape? And also, like, what would you project going forwards? Like, how big can the WNBA get in upcoming years from a betting perspective?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I've directly seen a Caitlin Clark effect. She has clearly brought a very large casual fan base into the sport. I actually went and looked it up. League-wide attendance is up 32% this year from last year. I mean, I know it's early, but the buzz around this rookie class, her, Angel Reese, Cam Brink, all of them, it's already having a noticeable effect on the league. Whether that translates to betting, I don't know. Again, I would suspect that with new eyeballs and new fans, you're going to get new bettors. That just seems like common sense to me. And to circle back on the prop stuff, I would think that there would be a wider menu array of prop stuff because of that moving forward. I think that history has shown that the sport has fans. It's just how well it's marketed and how accessible it is to fans. So I suspect that the betting aspect would be the same too. So
on the Caitlin Clark front, you mentioned that it's brought in a lot of casual fans into the league. And I see this along a lot on my timeline, people debating her merits and like where she ranks within the league right now. And I'm just curious from an actual WNBA bettor, where do you rank her like we don't have to go a specific spot, but where do you rank her amongst the other players in the WNBA currently and future looking? Where do you see her career going? Because there's a very wide range of opinions on Caitlin Clark right now.
Also, who's the best player in the WNBA?
Best player would probably be Breanna Stewart, maybe Asia Wilson. I think Stewart's game is a bit more versatile, but it's 1A, 1B. Clark, I think, is probably somewhere around the 20s in current form. She's already an elite passer, probably the second or third best pure point guard in the NBA already. Um, Usage numbers are kind of insane. She's getting usage numbers that you don't see all-time great WNBA players getting. And currently her offensive efficiency just isn't quite there yet. It's going to come along. I have no doubt in that, but it's going to take her a while to adapt to the physicality and just the defense in general in the W. I mean, she's not playing, Northwestern anymore. She's playing in the bigs now. As far as where I think she ends up, I would be shocked if she doesn't end up as like a perennial top 5 player, maybe even by the end of the year. I think that her game translates really well. I've been a little critical of her on Twitter, but that's not to say that I dislike her. I wish the usage numbers would come down just a hair. I think if the usage numbers came down, her efficiency would probably go up a hair, and that would make her team better.
I actually don't know the answer to this, but when you do go at Caitlin Clark on Twitter, do you get a lot of flack? Like, are there yeah?
Oh yeah. There's stands. There's Caitlin Clark stands. To even have a conversation about if she's the best women's college basketball player of all time is blasphemy. There's Iowa fans all over Twitter that are suggesting that the Fever need to be blown up, and that last year's #1 overall pick, who had like a historic rookie season in Aaliyah Boston, is complete trash, and she needs to be traded and shipped out of town. And it's Caitlin can do no wrong, and that's just the reality I think that we all need to accept, and it's never going to change. So.
One of the beauties of Twitter. Yeah, really tough to post an opinion on anything nowadays. We're talking to Alex Bartlett here on Circles Off. If you made it this far, and you haven't smashed that like button, please do so. Smash that like button down below. If you're not subbed here on Circles Off, make sure you do that. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review 5 stars.
Also, I personally want to apologize for the Caitlin Clark discussion. I didn't want to put you guys through that. Rob put it on the sheet. I tried to get it out, but he's like, no, we're going to put it in. It's going to be good for the show.
I'm genuinely interested in this.
I said, all
stuff.
right, buddy.
It's the
your
biggest
call. Put it in.
It's a huge story, right?
But to those out here, like, I apologize. I got you. You're a real one. Appreciate you sticking through. Like and subscribe. Anyways, we're going to go on to basically wanted to get into some betting challenges here that you faced. I know, obviously, Rob mentioned you came up from what was presumably someone who didn't really know anything about sharp betting, and now got to a certain point where you can win as a side job right now. What were some of the early challenges that you needed to overcome back in the day to actually get to this point?
The biggest one for me, easily. Once you start winning, comes more money with that. I mean, how do you get the money in and out of the books? How do you move around large sums of money? Having to have cash on hand to settle up with people, all of that stuff was completely foreign to me. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand. The first time you get limited is pretty shocking. Realizing that you've burned what is a good out for you. And then how do you get that money out of there? Especially when the first time I ever deposited into an unknown offshore sportsbook that no longer exists was through Amazon gift cards. So then how do you get that money back out?
Might rhyme with 5 crimes.
Tony book. But then on top of that, it's been a widely discussed conversation on here, but getting more accounts, going to friends and family. Again, as somebody who doesn't have friends or family in the gambling space, trying to convince my parents and that I'm not going to be whacked by the mob if they sign up and have to give a driver's license to somebody was honestly one of the biggest hurdles. And I think that there's still an outside chance that my mother's thinks that I'm going to get kneecapped by Tony down at the local deli or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's different eras, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, those honestly were the two biggest hurdles getting into it. The scaling stuff comes with time. Comes it's not. I don't. You can hear people talk about it, but I think everybody's journey to scaling up is a little bit different. Um, so
Did
definitely.
you utilize partners in scaling up?
yeah, so I mean, I had some friends and family. I never really went outside of that circle. The account getting thing is just not my. Again, I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. That's not my forte. Um, Schmoozing people, asking them if they've got paper heads. That's not my strength. Getting hooked up with people who do that, I'll leave that for the people that are good at that. So.
Fair enough. Speaking of challenges and overcoming them, you were once called, quote unquote, one of the worst follows on gambling Twitter. For those who don't know what I'm referring to, here's the clip.
The next one here, I'm going to put this guy in the what I would call the AMOC category, except he doesn't work for the Athletic or put out any data. His tweets are just like, and we both know this guy, smart guy, has an edge betting, but his Twitter it is just like watching the grass grow. It's Alex Bartlett.
All right. And the floor is yours now, Alex, to respond to that criticism.
Yeah, so I mean to be called that by a guy that literally can't sit up straight on his own couch for an hour and a half long interview is pretty priceless. But I think the thing that Kanish forgets about, I mean, he's not wrong in fairness, but the thing that he is forgetting is that he needs to play court jester to get access to accounts. I mean, he needs to be, look at me, that's what he's good at. For me, on the other hand, I get to yell into the ether about whatever I want. I don't, I mean, he's not wrong. Why there's 3,000 people following me, I don't know. I mean, I am, I am one of the self-proclaimed, or not even self-proclaimed, one of the worst accounts on gambling Twitter, but I've earned that right to be. He gets to put on his clown mask and entertain people. It's two different ways of life.
In all seriousness, do you have a personal relationship with Kanish? Because it seemed like, I actually don't know, but it seemed like he has some sort of connection to you based off of the way that he broke
yeah,
that one
so
down.
him and I are friendly. He was actually the first person to really give me a shot in the space. He reached out to me for the original round of XFL, so I was sending him XFL stuff before that got shut down for the pandemic. And then through him, I've gotten set up with some other people. So yeah, I mean, we're friendly. We're still in group chats. We talk. It's all in good fun. The way I look at it is he's one of those people. If he's not poking you in the ribs, he probably doesn't like you that much. So.
And even if he does or doesn't like you, who cares?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have a couple more questions here, more on the lighter stuff. Actually, you know what? One thing Rob had on here, I am interested in is, what are your future goals within the betting space right here? Are you ever hoping to make this a full-time thing? I like to ask that to people who are earning money but not yet professional.
Yeah,
Is it in the cards?
For me, probably not. The money is there to make it a full-time thing. But again, I have good benefits through work. I have an understanding with them. They know what I do. I'm not wasting their time, but they're aware of it. And the money allows me to take chances that I wouldn't otherwise feel comfortable taking. I'm not necessarily a risk averse person, but I wouldn't want to go out and stake real money on something that if I did or didn't know I had an edge on, if the mortgage payment had to come out of that money too. So I don't think that I would ever go full time. As far as like what I'm hoping it turns into, I don't really know, to be totally honest. The money is all going into other investments at this point. Crypto, some other stock stuff. So it's working for itself. I still enjoy finding other small things to bet on. Yeah, so I think that's as more small fun leagues come into play, I think that I'll probably keep trucking along on those, and uh, it keeps me entertained. So
Fair enough. Everyone has their own goals. Before we get into our final questions, any emerging trends or developments in sports betting that you find particularly either exciting or concerning potentially going forward?
yeah, so I think I'm in kind of the same boat with you, Rob, where I see a lot of the TikTok tout stuff, um, and I find that alarming and disingenuous. The SGPs, the amount of money that these guys are either actually betting on them or pretending to bet on them, um, I think is going down a wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it is possible to build a bankroll from nothing. I mean, that's what I did. I started off with $500, and my goal was to basically make a couple extra $100 a year to take a vacation with. Um, so you can. Oh, great! The cats killing each other. Hold on. Sorry about that.
No
Uh,
worries.
yeah, so started off with a small bankroll, and I mean, you can build that into something. You know, I don't think that, I don't think that the get rich quick scheme stuff is good, but there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, that's the way the industry's going. I know there are edges in the SGP thing, so you know, uh, people can put those to work. But yeah, I'm not super excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear on my end, I don't actually have a problem with people producing like SGP content. I have a problem with people who produce SGP content like they are Billy Walters, and like, you know, guaranteeing people are going to win and using like really. It's the deception that bothers me, right? Like someone wants to make a TikTok video of their SGP for the night, and they're like, "Here, I'm just throwing darts and like." You know, I'm doing this to have fun. I honestly don't have an issue with that. It is a high hold bet type. People should know that going into it. But it's the ones that are, you know, like Zach's favorite guy who's sitting in his Jeep Rubicon, you know, wearing a fake watch in the passenger seat, by the way, not
Hey.
even the driver's seat.
How do you know that was a fake watch? And that kid, for all we know, is making bank. We don't know that.
I know, but it's sad that that's
we
the
were
route.
we were chirping him for like his promo, but technically he didn't really mention anything about betting for us to know if he was winning or losing. He just
I think maybe the disconnect for me too is that I don't. I mean, I know a lot of the entertainment value for people comes in sweating the bets and in doing it with friends, and SGPs are a really good way to do that. I don't. I mean, I don't consider myself a gambler per se. Like, I don't enjoy sweating games. I don't. That's not fun for me. So the idea of putting together, you know, some, you know, 8 leg player to score the first basket parlay and sitting down and having a bunch of beers with the you know, the guys on a Friday night and sweating that, losing, you know, whatever, a couple $100. That's not me. So that's probably some biased opinion in there too.
Yeah, fair enough. And you're entitled to that as well. All right. Doesn't have to be sports betting related. Can be anything in life. Totally up to you. One thing that you think is plus EV in life and one thing that you think is minus EV in life.
Yeah, so the plus EV, I can't remember if anybody else has said this. I'm sure they have, but is connecting with old friends. I'm not necessarily terribly. I'm busy, and it's easy to lose track of people, especially if you're not seeing them regularly. I reached out to some friends we hadn't seen in a while and went and got dinner with them and had a blast. You know, catching up with them. So I'm trying to actively make an effort to reach out to people and reconnect. It takes zero effort to have a text conversation over the course of hours or even days. So the fact that, you know, I'm a busy person, that shouldn't change that necessarily. So, and then the negative EV is gardening. It's that time of the year. The weather's getting nice. every year I decide that I'm going to garden again. This is going to be the year. I'm going to get out there in the spring. I like being outside. I'm going to enjoy the weather. I go to the store and I spend $200 on dirt and fertilizer and plants and all this stuff. Plant them in. You got to weed everything. Water it. Go out there and water it. And then I live the way that our neighborhood is set up. There's a house in front of us that feeds the squirrels and birds, and there's a house behind us that feeds the squirrels and birds. So I am a rodent and bird highway. So then I'm spending the entire summer fighting birds and squirrels and rabbits out of the garden, all to get some tomatoes and lettuce and cucumbers, and then be so tired of eating salad by the time that the garden is all harvested that I never want to eat another salad again. So bonus plus EV, go to farmers markets and buy that produce. Let somebody else deal with all the headache. It's not worth the time. Don't garden. It's for suckers.
There you go.
I've never resonated more with both the plus EV and the minus EV here. Gardening for me, I finally learned after probably 5 or 6 years that it just wasn't going to happen. I will say though, I did, when I first moved to my place, which was 7 years ago now, I did plant a raspberry bush, which was actually one of the best decisions I ever made. We get tons of raspberries. Sorry.
That's one of the best decisions he ever made in his life.
I will retract that statement. But that is fruitful every year.
No
fresh raspberries. No, it grows like a weed basically. You just kind of keep it enclosed to an area. Perfect. But the rest of this, like growing lettuce, I tried to do that because obviously I have tortellini, a tortoise. I'm like, fuck, I gotta buy this guy lettuce every week, berries and stuff. But that's horrible. On your plus EV, I don't want to make this like super heavy, but I will just share like a personal experience of mine. So that really resonated with me. A lot of the stuff that Kanish has actually been posting to Twitter recently, just being like a little bit more open, has really like rubbed off in me and helped me. I'm kind of like going through a midlife crisis, or have been, I would say. Nothing bad. I'm not like super depressed, but just like lacking fulfillment in my life since football ended. And one of the big things for me was reconnecting with old friends. And that's like really got me back on track. A conversation I had with a friend who I hadn't seen in a long time, where I kind of just basically shared this with him. He kind of said that he went through the same a few years ago, and one thing that really helped him was just getting out of his comfort zone and doing things that he typically wouldn't do. For any Seinfeld fans out there, there's an episode where George Costanza talks about how his instincts on everything are wrong. So if he does the opposite of everything he thinks he should do, he will be doing what he is right, and he ends up with a great-looking girl, and like his life turns completely around. I've kind of been doing that, honestly. I'm doing stuff that I've never done before, and it's gone a long way. So I've just personally learned over the last couple of months, the reconnecting with friends is huge, but just getting outside of your comfort zone. I do a lot of hiking now. I just came back from a fishing trip, which I don't even enjoy, but like kind of had a great time. I've done karaoke recently. So yeah, I mean,
that stuff
out of your
matters.
comfort zone. Yeah,
I think it's honestly pretty admirable that he's sharing that stuff, because I think there's probably a lot of people in this space that resonate with that. I mean, it kind of goes back to the emerging trend stuff. Like, betting at a high level is not that entertaining. I mean, it's a lot of hours in front of a computer. It's a lot of sitting around and waiting for news. It's a lot of it's pretty echo chambery. And then it's stressful. I mean, like, again, that's part of the reason that I don't know if I would ever want to do it full time, is because I get to divorce the two, the needing the money and the wanting of the money.
Yep.
But if you're relying on that and you go through a downturn, I can see where you would just be absolutely miserable. So yeah, I mean, having friends outside of that echo chamber, yeah, it matters.
Yeah, I personally, and again, don't want to make it too heavy. We'll move on. But like, I don't get a ton of fulfillment from betting anymore. I used to 5 years ago. Like, I just wanted to make money. That was it. And like, the more money I made, like that drove me to keep doing it. And then I just got to a point where I just don't get the fulfillment. Like even on really good winning days, you'd obviously rather have that than really big losing days, but I don't get a rush from it. It just doesn't matter to me. I thought like, okay, golf season's around the corner. I'm going to start golfing a bunch and like I'll get my, and it really didn't. And I've been finding a lot of fulfillment in doing things that I typically wouldn't do. And that's not for everyone. Some people don't like it, but my typical would be, okay, I'm going to bet. And when I'm not betting, I'm going to go down to the basement and I'm going to watch Netflix or something. And I'm just like kind of going through a cycle. And yeah, anyways, that really resonated with me about connecting with old friends because it was actually conversations I had with other people who had been going through similar experiences and just kind of bonding over that, doing new things. And by the way, like I'm totally fine as a person. I'm just really just sharing my experiences. And I would suggest that if you are like living through some sort of period of life where you're unhappy or whatever, it's okay to talk about it. I don't give him credit enough. Kanish, I don't actually want to give him credit, but I will. It did kind of inspire me to like try to turn things around a little bit. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to follow that with your plus EV or minus EV.
I got a decent one for this week, actually.
As long as it's not Smoothie Hut or whatever the hell you reckon. Like that.
What was that?
That was Kanish's plus EV.
Kanish.
He's drinking all smoothies now instead of coffee. He's promoting his local smoothie brand.
Okay, I thought you guys were chirping one of my older ones.
The fact he didn't get a shirt or something, that would have made it funnier if he showed up to his next appearance like wearing a branded shirt or something.
I wouldn't put it past him. He would do anything for a little amount of money. I know that because of what we pay him here at that.
So my plus EV minus EV for the week is the game that we play, the game that we're all involved in, which is sports betting, is just so variance heavy. And at the end of the day, I resonate with what Bartlett's saying here and the fact of relying on the money, needing it versus wanting it, because we don't work hours and get paid at the end of the day like other people might in certain industries. So my plus EV move of the week is when you are on a really good winning streak, do nothing, change nothing, do not get too excited, do not worry, it's going to pass. That 100% will pass. And do the exact same things that you were doing there, because eventually you will be on an equivalent or worse or better losing streak. And when you are on that losing streak, do nothing as well and don't let it get to you either way, the highs and the lows. The best advice that I received in this space was that the money is made when you place the bet. Meaning, when you place the bet, if you placed a $100 bet on a 2% edge, you just, by clicking that button, whether it was on your phone, on your computer, whatever, that button click made you $2.
Yeah.
And you're not going to receive $2 from that click. You're either going to be minus 100 or plus 100, whatever. But at the end of the day, that is how the game works. So you cannot get too high on the winning streaks, and you cannot get too low on the losing streaks, because it will actually eat you up alive. With that being said, I'm sure there's people out there that maybe it's right now that you need to hear it, or maybe come back to this video when you are in a losing streak. But don't worry about it. Settle down. Look back at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. Say, am I doing the right things? Am I doing the same things I was doing when I was winning? Do I need to change anything? Optimize your process. But in no way should gambling be impacting your life up or down. Just remember, money is made when you click the button, not when the game is being played.
Yep, it's valid. Good point. We'll end it off here, Alex. Appreciate you joining here on Circles Off. If you could go back 5 years and talk to a previous version of yourself, what advice would you give to your former self?
I think it would be to be more aggressive with known edges. You always hear about good bankroll management, and that's obviously very, very important. If you have an edge that you know is a big edge, it's probably okay to overbet your bankroll. I'd rather go bust taking a chance than feel like I've left money on the table. And there have been times I felt like I left money on the table. So again, if you know you've got a big edge, you might as well bet.
That's a very common. I don't think anyone's brought it up in like the final question before, but it's a very common answer or like topic that comes up during interviews that we have from people. It's just like, I wish I had had really went hard when I had this.
But there then, as the contrarian of that is, there's people who thought they had a big edge and went bust because of that. So in hindsight, it's always easy to say, yeah, I should have gone harder on these edges. But unless you can, but for the most part, I do agree with what you said.
Yep.
If it's a known edge, sometimes it's okay to juice it because of the fact that it won't be there forever. If it's going to be there forever, then that's the proper bankroll management for it, is the Kelly staking or whatever it is. Anyways, this has been episode number.
Do you know it? Do you know what episode number?
I'm waiting. No,
It's been episode
since we stopped doing the numbers. I don't know any.
Number 155. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Bartlett157, or as Joey Knish says, don't follow him on Twitter. Just mute him, block him, whatever you got to do. Appreciate everyone who listens. Smash that like button down below. We'll catch everyone back here for Circles Off next week.
Appreciate y'all. See ya.